Hey everyone, I have some news. I'm hosting a workshop on July 18th at noon Eastern called Take Back Your Time. If you are tired of never having time for yourself and feeling like you are the one who does everything around the house, then I highly recommend that you go to momslovecoaching.com/takebackyourtime and sign up. I want you to know that if you show up and do the work and learn the concepts that I teach, then this workshop will be life-changing. You will understand the true reason that you have such a hard time taking any time for yourself. And once you understand that, everything else will fall into place like puzzle pieces. So join me on July 18th at noon Eastern to take back your time. Go to momslovecoaching.com/takebackyourtime. You'll also be able to find the link in the show notes. See you there. Welcome to Self-Care from the Inside Out for Moms. I'm your host, Carrie McFarland, a certified life coach and founder of Moms Love Coaching. I help moms put themselves first to stop burnout. If you're a mom who is exhausted from carrying the load of getting it all done, then you are officially invited to join the conversation every week. It's the perfect time to take a break, grab your coffee, and focus on the most important person in your life, you. Welcome, everybody, to the Moms Love Coaching Podcast, Self-Care from the Inside Out for Moms. I am Carrie McFarland with Angie Turgeon-Ledoux. What's happening in Vermont today?
Oh, it's just, looks like it's going to be another day, but heat. But it's right now, it's not as humid as it was last night. So I'm hopeful that the melting heat is tough on folks. So it feels like it's a little bit better. So how about you in Massachusetts?
Yeah, it's the same. It's super humid. It feels super gross. I'm hoping that breaks soon. I don't mind the heat, and I was actually outside yesterday in the shade on our swing that we have outside, so that was okay. But it's like you can't really do much. I took the dog for a walk, and I think the both of us almost passed out.
Probably.
I thought it was late enough in the day, but apparently it was not. She just stopped and like kind of dug her heels in, like, I'm not going any further.
We went out at 9:00 last night, so it was just almost dark. The fireflies were amazing last night, so I think fireflies might like heat and humidity quite a bit. Somebody was having fireworks in the far distance, and we think she got scared, the dog, because she did one lap around the yard, and we were way in the backyard walking up to the house, and she was waiting on the porch for us. So.
Our dog's been not happy about the fireworks. We've had to sit with her every night for the past 3 nights because they start going off and she gets scared. She doesn't know what they are. She doesn't really do that with thunder. It sounds the same to me, but it must feel different to her.
Right.
Somehow.
And she's feeling those vibrations.
So today we are continuing, and Angie wasn't here last week. We missed you, Angie.
That's right. Sorry, y'all.
So I was solo last week. I think I did okay. I think I did okay without you. I do
Don't
like
get
them
used
better
to it. Don't
together.
get used to it.
I won't get used to it. So we're continuing the series. July is Take Back Your Time. I'm actually having a workshop about this very topic on July 18th, and I'll talk about that at the end. But what I want to talk about today is, I think, a very big piece of moms feeling like they don't have enough time to themselves is lack of support in general. And lack of support, to me, is across the board. It's not just in the house, right? It's not just with your spouse or with your partner. It's lack of support. You know, our support system as a society has kind of been deconstructed. So when I say lack of support, I'm talking about family, I'm talking about spouses and partners, I'm talking about society, and if you're working outside the home, the lack of support that you have from employers. It's accumulative, and it affects moms in a way that I don't think it affects other people. So if you think about that old adage, it takes a village, as Angie pointed out when we were talking about this before we started, it takes a village to raise a child is technically a thought, and we don't necessarily need to believe it. But what I think of when I think of that is that phrase came from the way that people actually lived. They lived in a community that would look out for each other. And it was highly based on gender roles. So if we kind of separate that out and just look at the support piece, the women would usually stay together and help each other. They were doing things together. They were doing their cooking together. They were trading food together. They were raising their, helping each other with their kids. They were, they were the teachers. They were everything. And they were always supporting one another. And so it wasn't really thought about. It was just the way that people lived. And it was very helpful to raising our kids in an environment where everybody felt supported, instead of what it has evolved into now. It's sort of like everybody for themselves. It's like
Certainly
families
feels that way.
Yeah, families have moved away. We don't see our family. We had support in certain ways, but in terms of like the everyday, I'll cook for you tonight, or I'll bring you food, or I'll watch the kids so you can go do that, or, something like that. Like, we didn't have that at all. And I think that's true for a lot of people.
My experience was different. My parents lived 10 miles from the center of the town we used to live in, our houses. But Jacob was going to high school in that town. So I'd just drive up and my parents lived right in that town. They moved when my girls were still in middle school. Then my girls went to high school a mile up the road from where they lived. So there was even some support then. Yes, it did change. And right now, like today, I'm going to go grab my grandchildren from my son who lives 20 minutes away. I have always said, like, I don't know how folks do it who don't have that family structure. But when it comes to, parenting kids and the activities that kids are in now. I watched when my son and daughter-in-law had their oldest, he's into athletics, trying to juggle and take the babies out. And an older one who's in middle school, and then the two younger ones.
So here's what I think about that. And that is a perfect example of the way that we're thinking now, which is a direct result from not having that support system. And kids have lost that too. Kids used to have their own support system, right? And we called it, just going out and playing with your group of friends. But that doesn't happen the way that it used to when we were little, right? It didn't even occur to us as kids to go to our parents and tell them that we need them to drive us to play with our friends. It wasn't even a thought in our heads. You just go outside, get on your bike, and find your friends. And sometimes you were riding your bike around for a while by yourself because there was nobody around until you found somebody. So, and you go knocking on people's doors, is so-and-so home? You want to go play, like would call each other on the phone. Like, it was all left up to us to do that, which took the burden off of the parents. Now that's all but gone. I'm sure it exists in some places, but I know with my kids, that was one of the first things I noticed, is that there were no kids around. There were no kids around because everybody was in daycare or camps, or right. And we didn't do that. One of us always stayed home, and sometimes it was me and sometimes it was my husband, but we didn't put our kids in daycare. We didn't put our kids in camp. And what I didn't realize is all the kids are there. And so our kids had nobody to play with. So
Right.
it was very revealing to me, but it's a direct result of not having that village, because the burden now it's on the mom to make sure that the kids have something to do. We're the ones running them around to all those activities, to your point, to the sports things, to when they're little gymboree or play dates or play groups or bringing them to the park. It all falls on us to make sure that they are entertained all the time.
And if we're not running them around, we're responsible for the coordination. The moms are the ones, taking the responsibility for communicating with each other and setting up the times and making sure the kids know and all that stuff. And,
Yep.
sure that the times of the practices. And it is a lot. And I don't think we really appreciate, we multitask, like that's something about our evolution as females. We take it for granted and we don't give ourselves credit for that skill set, and also taking the time to just relax and not do that, because that takes a tremendous amount of brain capacity. The cognitive burden and the emotional toll it takes managing your children's lives. It's a full-time job, y'all.
Well, and managing everything. I mean, that invisible load is real. And it's not just invisible to us, it's invisible to everybody, because we just, it goes back to just not even having the thought that that's not what we're supposed to do, right? It doesn't occur to us that we don't need to be the ones to have that running checklist in our minds all the time. Just needing to be the one that constantly thinks of every little thing. I mean, I just look back on just driving to the grandparents' house, like when we would take the kids and drive them to the grandparents' house, right? I would get up, make sure that the blankies, the toys, the food, the diapers, are they going to need this? Are they going to need that? What's the weather going to be like? I need to bring a change of clothes for them. Are they going to go play at the beach? I'm going to need to bring that stuff. Do I need to bring the sunscreen? We're going to this grandparent's house and they usually don't have it baby proofed. So I'm going to need to make sure I bring this thing to make sure that they don't smash their head on the fireplace. All that stuff that goes running in your head that just goes right. And nobody else thinks of that. I mean, I used to walk in rooms when my kids were little and scan it like Mission Impossible. Be like look at all the different things that could hurt them. It's like, oh, that chair looks like it's broken. That little piece on the floor. What are they watching on TV? Why is that on? Oh, that outlet isn't covered. Their fireplace thing has a very sharp edge. I'm going to throw a pillow on that. So many things go through your mind in like 5 seconds.
Yeah, this living room is a death trap.
It is. Yeah, exactly. And you do that all day long. And that's just one example, but we do that with everything. And you do that all day long, day after day after day after day, you get tired. This is why when somebody asks you a simple question, you're like, why are you asking me that question? Go figure it out. Because your tolerance level completely plummets because you're completely filled up with all that stuff. So I looked up the invisible load, and what I found is it broke it down into 3 separate categories: into cognitive labor, which is what I just described, thinking about every little thing. Emotional labor, which I thought was interesting, is it's basically maintaining the emotional health of the household. So when the kids are upset, think about how many times, and I can't put this all on my husband because I would lose my crap too, but think about how many times your kid gets upset about something and starts screaming their head off, and then your spouse or partner gets frustrated with that. And then they start contributing to the situation. And now you are the one who needs to fix that. You are the one who needs to get everything back to status quo. So now you're taking on all of that. You're taking on your kids' emotions. You're taking on your partner's emotions. You're just kind of putting your emotions to the side for a moment because you need to jump in and fix that and make sure that everything is calmed down and that everybody's happy and everything is good. And then on the other side of that, it's really just worrying about everything. You worry about them going to school. You worry about them having enough food. You worry about them making friends. You worry about them getting good grades. You worry about their socialization. You worry about their physical development. You worry, right? I mean,
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's like you just constantly, so between making sure that everything is taken care of, that mental checklist that you have on top of the emotional labor that you need to go through, and then just the overall mental load, which is just both of those things combined. Your brain is just constantly anticipating and preparing and organizing, and wake up like that. You do that all day. You go to bed like that. That takes a toll. It's a drain on your mental and emotional well-being. It's like running on a treadmill. You can do it for so long, but if you have to do it past the point of what your capacity is indefinitely, you're going to start to break down. You can't help it. You have to get off and take a break. I think that invisible load is really something that speaks to how society, how we have just been conditioned to take all of that on without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think that's where it comes from, because I do think that it falls to the mom simply because the mom doesn't question that those things belong to her. It turns into a situation where when the dad does something that traditionally the mom does, then he's helping, whereas the mom's just expected to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just want to get away from the whole being helped, because it's not about being helped. It is about distributing the load evenly, because you both have a duty evenly to do it. It doesn't all fall on you. It doesn't all fall on him. Let's talk about jobs too.
Let's talk about jobs.
Let's talk about jobs, because a lot of times both parents work. I mean, that's probably the majority and the norm now. We didn't do that, but I know that we were in the minority for that. So
I do think it's changing though, and I don't have any data statistics to back this up, but I think the cost of infant care is prohibitive, especially if you're one of those families that, I think, young professional families where they may be dealing with college student loan debt, and then they have the expenses of home, and they're starting a family and they want to have a few children close in age. The costs of infant care is ridiculous. It certainly is not easy to find in our area. It's definitely causing more couples to decide that one is going to stay home and take care of the kid.
Yeah, and I can see that, and that's part of the reason why we did it. I will say, I really did feel like I was the one who needed to stay home, and while I was working, I really had that guilt, that extreme guilt that I should be home with my child. I now know that is complete social conditioning, and I'm not saying that people should never do that, and I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. I just want people to have the conscious choice to do that and not feel like they have to without thinking about it. Even if I had the awareness back then that I do now, I may or may not have chosen to do that. I don't know. I do recognize that part of that was social conditioning, but we learn that from birth, right? We learn those gender roles from the time that we're born. And, in our generation, it was very common for the mom to stay home and the dad to go to work. At least in my house, my mother was a housewife. She stayed home my entire life. It's all I ever knew. Like, she was always there when I came home from school. She always had dinner at 6 o'clock. She did all the grocery shopping. She did all the laundry. She ironed my dad's undershirts. I still I don't know what that was all about, but she did all the very typical housewife things. And so and I knew I wasn't going to be like that, but just the idea of the mom is the one that stays home and the dad is the one that goes to work was in my head subconsciously and consciously, like that was the right way. And even when moms do work, they tend to make their job flexible for their schedule, right? I think that's why a lot of women become teachers, and then they have their summers off and they have their, vacation times when the kids have vacation times, right? So Angie can speak to this.
Certainly was important. And like I said earlier, we moved to where we live now. It's in the school district, big school district, but I wanted to have my kids in the same building as me. It works so much easier if, staying after school for sports and all that stuff. Yeah. I had the flexible job.
I went back to work and I made my job flexible too. Now, it was interesting because my husband had his own business at the time and he worked from home. But he had deadlines and things like that. So I will say we were still a little bit non-traditional in that sense, in the sense that, like, for local things, like if the kids were sick at school, he would tend to be the one that picked them up because he was in the same town as them, right? And I was at work in a different town. But I did, even under those circumstances, I felt compelled to make my job flexible. So I played around with my schedule in terms of, at one point I was working every day, but I would get there at like 6:30 and leave at 3. So I would be home early for the kids so I could do dinner and get them to bed and, all that stuff, and be home in the afternoon. There was a time where I worked it out so I would have at least one day at home working from home. And then there was another time, and this was all the same job, by the way. And then I had another time where I worked 4 days. So 4 10-hour days, and I would just have a day off. So there was all different sorts of things that I did to make my job flexible. I made my job flexible within the 9 to 5 hours, basically. But there are other women that need to make their job flexible in terms of working off hours, in terms of, like, maybe they're working weekends or they're working nights, right? And then they're coming home and still doing all of the things, right? They're working those hours so they can be available during the day and barely getting any sleep. I actually knew somebody who did this. She got exhausted, And that's what happens is you try to fit in everything and make yourself bend to everybody else's schedule. And you basically just exhaust yourself. Mom guilt is so invasive and pervasive in our lives. The second that you have kids, it's like, it just, you don't expect it. It just sort of like lands in your lap, and then you just have it for the rest of your life. And it's like everything that happens is like your fault, and you feel guilty about it. And like, even though logically that's not true, it's like you still feel that way, and it's hard to get rid of it. It is not impossible, but you have to be very conscious of it and be very intentional with how you're thinking. Studies are still showing that the burden of the kids in the house fall to the mom, whether they're working or a stay-at-home mom. The responsibility, the load, the bulk of what is happening with those two categories falls on the mom still. It takes a toll on mental health. It takes a toll on physical health. It takes a toll on relationships, on women's careers. It takes a toll in every area of our lives because it's never ending. And unless you're very, very conscious of how to kind of stop that and make your life the way that you want it, you could go on like that forever. And so
even after they're adults. For sure.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because it's just ingrained in your thinking that that's how it's done. And so in the beginning of this, I talked about the workshop that I'm having on July 18th. And so I just want to talk about that a little bit again, because everything that we've talked about today directly relates to how much time you have as a mom. And so I want to empower moms to be able to take back their time. And so that's the name of the workshop, is Take Back Your Time. And so we're going to go deep into this stuff and some, other concepts as well. There's valid reasons that you don't put yourself first. It's not it's not just in your head. It's not made up. There's valid historical reasons why women just have a hard time putting themselves first, taking time for themselves, saying no to things. So my goal really is to help all moms prioritize themselves and really create that life that brings you joy, because you want to have a happy life. And sometimes, or not sometimes, all the time, if you want to have a happy life, you need to create that for yourself. It's not just going to fall in your lap. It's not just going to be handed to you. You need to be intentional about what you do in your life to be able to create that. And that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about in the workshop. So if you are interested in joining that workshop, and I highly recommend that you do, you can go to momslovecoaching.com/takebackyourtime and you can sign up there. Once you sign up, you're just instantly going to get the link to join. So you just want to make sure that you save that somewhere, put it in your calendar. You'll receive reminders from me too. But I just want to encourage you to register and attend this workshop, because I really believe that the concepts that we're going to be talking about in there will be life-changing for you. It's really going to open up your thinking to how it could be for you. You want your life to be a certain way, you can do that. So I highly recommend that you join momslovecoaching.com/takebackyourtime. Sign up there. There will be a replay. So if you're hearing that date, July 18th at noon, and you're like, oh, I can't go because of whatever you have going on, yes, there you will get the replay. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Yes. Bye. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. This makes it easier for everyone to find us and helps us spread our message about self-care from the inside out. Have a wonderful week, and remember, making yourself the priority is the highest form of self-care.